part of my series, part 2 of the Scandinavian defense with 2 knight to f6. So let's go right to the position. e4, d5. Already you're surprising the opponent. This is a great idea. E takes d5, knight f6. Not only one surprise, my friend, but 2. Okay, it's one thing when somebody plays, I play e4 occasionally, and I've played the Scandinavian enough. But one surprise is enough. And when you play d5 on the first move, and they take, and that's enough surprise. But like when you play knight f6 on the second move, then they're nearly very, very stymied, because they're expecting you to take with the queen and play that variation that they've prepared, 15 moves deep, the latest analysis. But no, you're going to play knight f6. So that's 2 surprises in the first 2 moves. I will tell you the truth. Very few people are prepared for this move. And it doesn't just go for club players. I have played against IM, GM level players who are not prepared to play against 2 knight to f6. GM and IM level players who are not prepared to play against 2 knight to f6. I will tell you that now. It is true. It is not an exaggeration. I am very sure you will catch everyone off guard, especially below 2400. So, this is part 2. In part 1, we saw important critical variations where white played d4 and c4 with a plan linked to queenside castling. In the second part of our lecture, we're going to look at more positional lines. I call them positional lines because they're a little bit quieter. And I think in some chess publications, they might have called this like the quiet line. So we're going to call it the quiet line. White plays d4 a la Morphy. This was played in Anderson, playing black. Morphy-Anderson. Morphy, the first player to really discover you don't have to hang on to the pawn to try to prove an advantage. d4, knight takes d5. No Portuguese gambit for us. We're just going to play it straight, so to speak. c4, critical move, not discussed today. c4, I think the only critical line is what we looked in lecture 1. With c4 and knight f3, bishop e3, castles long plans. The most critical line was there. We're going to look at more positional lines where white doesn't play c4 right away here. Knight f3 on move 4. This is a tricky line. Actually, I think Leko played this several times, and other people. Not that this position is encountered so much at the echelon, the highest echelon, but still knight f3 has some theoretical backing from very, very good players. Most recent game, my friends, was played in 2005 in the Melody Amber Blindfold Tournament. Peter Leko versus Alexander Morzevich. But Morzevich played very badly. He played a variation where he exchanges his bishop with bishop g4 takes f3 early for no reason whatsoever, but a little bit of background. Actually, this was a blindfold tournament, and to be honest, I don't think that Morzevich was taking it all that seriously, and that game shouldn't be taken too seriously. Leko played well, he won, but the variation in question was not a serious one. Black should not play bishop g4, of course. He should play g6. This is the critical move. Now, first note, white can transpose to critical lines with c4. c4, knight, b6. We will transpose to chapter 1, so to speak. But if white was going to play c4, usually they will play c4 right away. So if you don't see c4 right away, chances are white is holding back for a reason. So they're going to play what we call the positional bishop e2. Bishop e2. Why bishop e2? Well, theoretically, you could play bishop c4. Then it would be kind of very, very similar to Alekhine's defense. I would think after bishop c4, c6 would be an extremely solid plan for black. So bishop e2, the main line. Now bishop g7, castles for white, castles for black. It's an unavoidable move. Now, this is the key position, believe it or not. There are two very, very interesting moves for white here. Not just one, but two. And I'm not talking about c4. In fact, you should be praying for the other guy to play c4 in this position. c4 is lame. Let me put it this way, and we're going to sum up here. When I was really learning chess, I found that, like, general things that you could remember, simple rules of thumb, were very valuable. c4 and bishop e2 do not go together. Remember, bishop e2 and c4 do not mix well together. Not at all. No line where white plays c4 and bishop e2 is dangerous. Problem with the position for black is that white has a strong pawn at d4. If white plays c4, black backs off and then starts to put pressure on d4. But the problem is if white doesn't play c4, his d4 retains the possibility for white to play c3. If we talk about this position in very fundamental strategic terms, white is better, slight advantage to white, because he has a strong point in the center at d4. End of sentence, end of discussion. White has a slight advantage out of the opening because after 6 moves, he has a strong pawn at d4. End of discussion. There's no argument. It's just a question of whether black can fight back and equalize. Okay. So, what should white play? Well, I have some ideas about this position. I have several games where I played black myself. I played c5. Black played c3. White played c3 against me, and I played c5 against Sergei Kudrin. This is a big mistake. It's too risky. It's possible. You might be able to play it, but I mean, it's just too risky. Against Sergei Kudrin, I played c5, and he took, and I played knight a6. And I played it as a gambit. I was hoping he would take my knight with bishop takes a6, like a Catalan in reverse, where I give up a pawn and my structure and everything. I played some blitz games like this, b takes a6, and everything might compensate. I have a super light squared bishop. I might be able to regain the pawn at c5. I mean, he's given up a strong point at d4. No way. Is a solid grandmaster going to play this? He played c5, pawn takes pawn, knight a6, bishop c4. Oh, well, I didn't know about that move at the time. That's a serious problem. After this move, black has very, very serious problems. And maybe in my game against Kudrin, I could have held on for the draw. But there's no question, even with very good play from black, after bishop c4, black has some serious issues in this position. Very, very serious issues. So, I'm going to recommend something else. And I think it works. After c3, we follow the game Pascal playing black against Fogarashi, Hungarian GM, b6. Now watch in the game Pascal versus Fogarashi how quickly, in fact, black not only equalized but got a good position. A good position. I mean, a very good position, quickly, with black. So, after c5, we're not going to play, after c3, we're not going to play c5. We're going to play b6. Now, white has a big question, what to do. I didn't play c4. There was a game, and actually this is maybe critical. There was a game, an important game, where white played c4 here. And I'm trying to find it in a database. I believe black was a very strong grandmaster, Utud Adianto. The game against Adianto was c4, knight back to f6. But if white is going to waste 2 moves on playing c4, I believe the black's position is fundamentally okay. If you're going to waste 2 moves on playing c3, c4, I don't care what you did, what I did, you're going to waste the tempo. Black has to be okay. And whatever happens, bishop b7, my analysis goes something like this. c4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop b7, d5, c6. And that's all there is to it. We counterattack against the strong point at d5. And black may not be better, but I would never for a minute believe that black is worse. Black is absolutely okay. He destroys the strong point at d5. And that's the whole point with our variation with b6. So, Fogarashi tried something a little bit tricky here, like to play in c3 Sicilian style, but I really don't think it's very good, to be honest with you. I lost the game, but not at all because of the opening. Actually, nothing to do with the opening. I had a good position. After knight a3, bishop b7, black has 2 beautiful bishops on the long diagonals. What is white going to do after knight a3? Knight a3, in my opinion, is a very weak move. In this structure, what does it contribute to white's position? Nothing. He's going to play c4. He played c4. I ask you, does it make sense? You'll see in just a few moves. So, knight a3, bishop b7. Now, white made the following move, which is rather pathetic in my opinion. Bishop d2. Very pathetic move. Knight d7 for black. This is important. We play knight d7. We want to keep open the long diagonal for the bishop on b7. But this is not a weak player. I am playing against a GM, a 2490 rated grandmaster, playing white. And the best setup he could come up with against b6 was knight a3 and bishop d2. Absolutely harmless. But what is your typical club level opponent going to be rated? I don't know. 2000, 1900, 1800? This guy is 2490, and the best he can come up with is knight a3 and bishop d2. Black is equal already. So, I played knight e7, he played c4. I was surprised by this move. It's very inconsistent with white's previous play. The knight on a3 contributes nothing to the position now, because the pawn on c4 inhibits its movement to that square, which, in fact, I thought that white was going to play knight c4. So I played knight f6. And now, position I think is equal. Basically, it's equal. c4, knight f6. He played here queen c1. Natural plan. Trying to trade the dark square bishop. Bishop h6. Black has to be careful. I feel I'm very happy with the way I played this position. In fact, I played rook e8. I think this is an excellent move. Excellent move. I mean, rook e8 has dual purposes. It allows for me to drop back. On bishop h6, I have the option to play back with bishop h8. I also create the possibility to attack the center with e5. Black is fully equal. If you don't believe me, ask your computer program, Fritz, Shredder, whatever. I'm sure that it fully appreciates that black is equal in this position. Bishop h6. Now, interesting and aggressive. If I was really in a fighting mood, I would have played bishop h8 here. But I think at the moment of the game, I was a little concerned that if I play e5 right away, maybe, he takes and has some play on the d file with his rook, so... I mean, if I play bishop h8, he plays rook d1, like so. Bishop h8, rook d1. He has play on the d file. Now I can't play e5. This is what I did not want to have happen. So I played the solid move, e5 immediately, destroying the center and equalizing the game completely. Equalizing the game completely. Slow variation, not serious. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, and now, actually, to be honest, I should have offered a draw around this point. The game is equal. My opponent is a decent player, but he doesn't have anything. I don't have anything special. We played on, and I pushed it too much, and I lost. So bishop takes g7, king takes g7, d5. I don't really like this move. a5, securing c5 for my knight. Black is even better now. I was very surprised by d5, giving me c5 and a dark square blockade. If anything, I think black is better now. Knight b5 for white, bishop a6, back to c3, solid move. Knight c5. I'm going to leave off here. We can establish the fact that black is equal in this position, has equal chances, and I think the opening was a complete success for him. And we held off a strong grandmaster with black, and we have a perfectly good position. Let's look at another variation that's very critical here. I don't want to waste any more time on c3. We're going to go back to the 7th move. So, going back, see all the moves go back to move 7, the critical moment. This move was recommended in many, many articles and books, rook e1. But if it was so strong, why would Kudrin, why would Fogarashi, two grandmasters, play c3 against me? I ask you that question. First of all, I think that c3 may be better, but b6 is an adequate response to c3. Rook e1 holds c4 in reserve, and that means that b6 is not so good here. See, if he can play c4 in one tempo, then b6 is not so good. Because after b6, c4, he's going to shut down that bishop with d5, and he's not going to have wasted 2 tempos on c3, c4. The key move here is c5. And I don't care what white plays here. I mean, c4 is possible. We just retreat the knight to b6. If d takes c, knight d7, white will not be able to hold on to the pawn at c5. Black is very close to equality here. Maybe it's not absolute equality, but black is very close to equality, and I don't think you can ask much more than that from any opening. I mean, it's not absolutely equal, but we will regain the pawn at c5, and any mainline opening is not going to be absolutely 100% equal. We're very close to equality here. It's a counterattacking opening. Black is, I'm not going to lie, I mean, black is a little bit worse, but I think he has good dynamic chances. We will regain the pawn at c5. No, the critical move is not c4, but take. D takes c5. But I'm going to introduce here, not an idea that's been produced in, I don't know, the New in Chess yearbook, not an idea that's in a magazine, in an article, in annotation to any game. This move is a theoretical novelty that is strong. It is tried and true and tested in my blitz games. Knight b4. Very strong. Theoretical novelty. Never played in a serious tournament game. And it's very, very strong. It pressures c2. And with the queen exchange that is in the offing at the moment, c2 becomes particularly sensitive. So ideas like bishop f5 become very interesting here. And remember, the long diagonal against a1 is a constant problem for white. If he plays something like c3, he loses the exchange or a whole rook immediately. I've had a lot of strong grandmasters. Usually they play knight a3 here. The most common move is knight a3. I think that black is fine in this position. I can just regain the pawn at c5. If I want, I could just play knight on b4 to ca6 and just take back. You can't move the bishop from c1 because you hang the b2 pawn after knight a3. Fully equal or very, very close to equal position for black. Knight b4 is my novelty. Very good improvement over known theoretical lines.